Exfoliation is a key part of aging skin management, and these are 5 mistakes you do not want to make. So check it out. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Amir Karam, board certified facial plastic surgeon and founder and creator of Karam MD Skin. I specialize in facial rejuvenation, which basically means I help people look as young as they feel. And on today's episode of Skin School, we're going to talk about a very important basic part of managing aging skin, and that is exfoliation, and what are some very common mistakes that people make when doing it. Learn these mistakes, avoid them, and you'll be off to the races. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this. There's a lot of things that happen to skin. It loses collagen, there's increase in pigment, it becomes filled with fine lines and wrinkles, dryness, dullness, etc. Now, I've talked about the importance of active ingredients like retinols and vitamin C's and niacinamide and peptides. Those are working at the genetic level to basically boost collagen, decrease pigmentation, and keep the skin fundamentally anatomically looking young over time. But what happens as skin matures is the top layer, the stratum corneum of the epidermis, which is the very top layer of the skin, begins to build layer after layer of dead skin cells. That dead skin cells causes the skin to look dull, and to touch it feels rough. So if you see young looking skin, it's that brightness, that light reflects off of it, it bounces off of it, doesn't look like there's anything basically impeding that bright light reflex, but aging skin looks dull, it doesn't reflect as well. A lot of that has to do with that stratum corneum getting thicker and absorbing the light as opposed to reflecting it. And that luminosity, that brightness, is an important part of looking young. Now, that has nothing to do with what's happening at the genetic level, which is what the active ingredients actively work on. But what you need to do physically in this skin that begins to mature a little bit and build up that layer is you need to remove it. You need to physically remove that layer. So like the peels of an onion, you peel away that sort of top layer of the onion, you get that glistening bright layer below. That's where you want to get to. Now, more advanced approaches, in-office type of things, to treat that or to address that are going to be like chemical peels, laser peels, even microdermabrasion where you physically are removing it. Now, those are going to be stratum corneum, upper epidermis removal, something you do from time to time in the office. But there are things you can do at home to keep that layer from building. And in that category, the entire space is called exfoliation. You're exfoliating the dead layers of the skin so that you can get to that glistening bright layer. Now, keep a couple things in mind. It's an active process, meaning that whatever you end up doing, today, let's say you go in for a laser peel or a chemical peel or microdermabrasion, or you do something at home and you remove this, guess what? It's coming back. Like, it's not stopping in its track and staying there. It's not a permanent, none of these things are permanent. It's a maintenance type of thing. So get that, that concept in mind that this is an ongoing part of your skincare routine that you're gonna have to do. Now, I'm gonna separate out the in-office type of treatments because practically speaking, they're never gonna be something you do on a weekly basis. They're gonna be something you do either on a quarterly basis, on a monthly basis, maybe a couple times a year type of thing, but that's not gonna be enough. That's not gonna be enough to keep your skin looking bright and fresh constantly. You have to move that into your home routine so that you can do it more frequently and maintain the changes. So what are the categories of at-home exfoliation? So number one, you've got chemical. With chemical are basically like chemical peels, they're acids, right? There's a variety of different ones. There's lactic acid, there's glycolic acids, there's a number of different type of acids that can be used that you're basically chemically exfoliating. You're loosening the connections between these dead skin scales, and then you're washing them off. Then there's physical. Physical are things like beads and particles that are basically using as a scrub to physically scrub that layer off of your skin. The third layer is enzymatic. What an enzyme will do is apply to the surface of the skin, and through the process of digestion, it'll break up and digest the dead layers, and as a result, it washes off again and off you go. So 3 layers, 3 categories of exfoliation techniques. And each of them have their pros and cons, and I'm gonna talk about them in context of your particular skincare requirements based on your skin. Pay close attention, especially when you're talking about chemical or physical exfoliants, because they do have certain implications based on certain skin types. Whereas enzymatic is probably the most well tolerated and frankly, kind of like a no-brainer in terms of applying it to your own skin situation, because it can literally be used on any skin type in any situation and has equal and excellent effects and is, in my opinion, the safest approach. And the reason why we, as part of Karam MD, chose to go down the enzymatic road is because it's very difficult, as you'll see, to in some ways avoid some of these mistakes, because they are very kind of dependent on certain aspects of how hard you rub or how often you do, etc. Whereas enzymatic, again, dry skin, light, sensitive skin, etc., all wraps up into similar use in everyone. So it makes it very simple. And we wanted something that was effective and simple. And that's what our particular product polishes. So just letting you know that up front as I discuss these, polish, enzymatic, that's the one that I particularly chose for our skincare as a all-around good at-home exfoliator. But it doesn't mean that the other ones don't work. They've been around forever and they work well. There's just some caveats, and we're going to talk about those in terms of mistakes as we go through. So what are the fundamental reasons why you would do an exfoliator as part of your general skincare routine? So number one, as I mentioned, is the dullness component, that kind of surface level dullness. The second thing is skin accumulates a lot of debris, dirt, makeup, sunscreen, all these different things that can really get in there and will also clog up pores. They'll decrease the skin's breathability, the function of the skin barrier, etc. So you're going to want something in addition to your daily twice-a-day cleansing, and we did a whole video on cleansing, believe it or not, there's caveats there too. You want to get something deeper in there to get those debris out of the skin, unclog those pores so the pores can move oil in without getting clogged up and then causing a pore to widen and dilate, which is a whole nother problem with skin. And I did a whole video on managing pores. So that deeper level of cleansing requires exfoliation. And the end result of exfoliation is your skin's gonna feel soft, it's gonna be translucent, it's gonna have that beautiful light reflex, that luminosity, and ultimately, functionally, it'll help the skincare products that you're applying to your skin work more efficiently and effectively, right? So if you're out there investing in skincare and you want it to work well, if you've got a beautiful pathway for the products to get into, well, obviously going to work more effectively and efficiently, right? So cleansing and exfoliating are an important setup for those other functional elements that come from skincare, but also aesthetically and youthfulness, brightness, softness, and glow are the qualities that come from exfoliation. So that gives you an idea of why it's an important part of a skincare routine. All right, so mistake number one. It sounds a little funny to say this, but I know this happens, is people use their exfoliator as a wash. They don't wash their skin ahead of time. So mistake number one is not washing your skin before you exfoliate. Remember, there's different levels of cleanliness. There's the superficial stuff you got to get off with your cleanser, then there's the deeper. So you want to make sure that you use a nice gentle cleanser, then you exfoliate. Don't go straight to exfoliation. And I kind of know this happens because I've been told by some of our own patients and customers that they use the polish as a cleanser. And that's not how it's supposed to use. So make sure in our line, rinse goes first, then polish would go next when you're exfoliating on this particular day. So make sure it's nice and clean slate, then use your exfoliator. Don't make the mistake of using the exfoliator as a cleanser. Number two is probably the most common mistake that's made. There's a lot of lines that have physical exfoliators. They're like beads, there's spheres, there's bamboo, there's irregular shapes, all these different things, and you're using it as a scrub, right? So you're scrubbing it. Now, this is where things get a little hairy, because how are you supposed to know how hard to scrub, how hard to press, how long to scrub? Because if you do too much of it, too much pressure, too long, too aggressive, too intense, what you're doing is you're creating micro tears with these physical exfoliators. The round spheres are better than irregular shaped in general, but even with those, if you go too hard and go too long with that, you're gonna create micro tears. Your skin's gonna come out looking red and it's gonna be a little bit irritated. It's gonna dry it out. It's gonna create micro tears, all of which will create two different potential issues. One is surface of the skin gets swollen, products don't work as well. Oil becomes increasingly, produced in response to this. So if you have oily skin, you'll get more oily skin. If you have dry skin, you actually get more dry skin. So there's this physical micro trauma issue that comes from the physical exfoliants that you got to be very careful. So generally speaking, if you're going to use a physical exfoliator, be very gentle, just light scrubbing motion, not a lot of pressure. Let the spheres or the shapes do whatever they're going to do to kind of like gently slough it off. But don't get into this mentality that harder, more aggressive is better and you're going to have a better outcome with the exfoliation. You're going to get more out of it. You're not. You're actually going to worsen your situation. Mistake number 3 is exfoliating too often. Same principle as exfoliating too hard. Whether it's a chemical, physical, or enzymatic, and you're doing it too often, what you're doing basically is you're not only, obviously, you're stripping the natural oils, all these things are important, but you're also violating and negatively affecting the skin barrier. Now, what is a skin barrier? Skin barrier is a very popular term that's being used, but it's actually very important. I'm glad there's awareness around the skin barrier. And what the skin barrier does, it's the functional barrier and the function of the skin. It's like, what is the skin there for? It's there to bolster an immune response to microbes and viruses and different things like that. So it's functioning in that way. It's keeping pollutants and irritants and stuff that's in the environment out of our inside by protecting our, blocking it from getting through our skin. And of course, it's doing all the normal sort of, pore functions, all the things that happen between sweat glands and oil glands and all that other stuff. So there's a functional aspect of skin that needs to be maintained. And if you exfoliate too often, you are weakening the skin barrier and exposing yourself to some of the consequences of that. So make sure you pay attention to how often you're supposed to. Now, generally speaking, like physical exfoliators, you're supposed to do anywhere from 1 to 2 times a week. But read their direction of the particular brand you're looking at very carefully. Chemical, depending on how strong the acid is, a very, very light lactic acid, you may be able to do it once a day. Generally speaking, it's probably not a good idea to exfoliate in any condition once a day. Maybe it's every other day with a very light lactic acid, and some stronger acids like once a week, right? Polish, which is an enzymatic, and anything in that enzymatic category, we recommend 2 to 3 times a week. More is not better in this case. More often is not better. So just be aware you follow the instructions carefully for the reasons that you're doing. And in that same vein, exfoliating too long while you're doing it is too, like we have, it's like 3 minutes to 5 minutes max on the polish. You don't want to leave it on too long. It's going to irritate the skin. Same thing goes for physical, chemical. Like you don't want to leave this stuff on your skin longer than it's directed because you're actually making the matter worse. So slow and gentle over the long run is the name of the game when it comes to these exfoliators. Number 4 is skin type dependent. The rule of thumb is if you have very sensitive skin, you're either going to use like an enzymatic exfoliator or you're very, very light chemical, like lactic acid, very light. You won't want to use physical on sensitive skin. Your skin will respond by redness and inflammation, all that stuff. If you have normal skin, you can use any of these categories. If you have acne-prone skin, you're better off using chemical or enzymatic because the physical exfoliators can cause the irritation that will lead to more acne. So keep that in mind. If you have oily skin, any of the categories will work, but keep in mind if you over exfoliate or do it too aggressively, you're actually going to produce more oil in response. So a little counterintuitive, but you're actually getting more oil production. So be aware that you're not being too aggressive with these techniques. For dry skin, the same thing applies to oily skin. Generally speaking, however, a enzymatic tends to be a little bit safer, a little bit less harsh, because if you go too hard on the other ones and you dry your skin out more, that obviously becomes an issue. So as gentle as possible on dry skin is better. And the 5th mistake that people make is they exfoliate and they walk away. The fact is that after an exfoliation session, your skin needs to be nourished. It needs to be given some moisture back. It needs to be given some of the things that are going to soothe the skin. So things like moisturizer, hyaluronic acid, ceramides, lipids, all these things are going to feed the skin properly and get the skin sort of responded and healed up from the exfoliating event. So don't think of the exfoliating event as the end all. You need to nourish it at the end. So in our particular line and patients who are on the trifecta, step 1 is rinse, which is the cleanser. Step 2 would be polish, which would be the enzyme. And then step 3 and 4 after that would be quench, vitamin C, and 4, illuminate. Quench and illuminate have all of the lipids and the hyaluronic acids and all that other stuff to basically nourish the skin really well. And just one caveat is that a lot of these exfoliators are single tasking and they're just an exfoliator. When we developed polish, we wanted it to have a lot of that stuff built into it in addition to vitamin C as well as azelaic acid to lighten the skin at the same time to get a little bit multitasking out of the product and also set up the skin for soothing and less sensitivity and all that other stuff that comes along with it. So those are all very important things to keep in mind when you're doing the practice of exfoliation and getting the process underway, which I highly, highly recommend as a general part of your skincare routine, especially for aging skin, because again, aging skin, that epidermal function of skin cell turnover and removal is not quite the same as it is when you're in your 20s. Very important. All right, folks, I hope that helped. 5 mistakes for exfoliation. Don't make them. My goal for all this is to help you guys make good decisions and learn the right way and not get confused by things. And frankly, I know it's especially when we start talking about dry skin and light skin and this and that and all the other things, it gets a little bit tricky. That's why, like I said, we developed something simple, because for me, simplicity is the only way to go. I can't process too much information and try to remember these different nuances about every little thing. Just enzymatic as a class, whether you use polish or not, enzymatic as a class seems to be a very good approach to exfoliating. So take it, use it, and enjoy it, folks. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, follow along for more of these type of videos in our Skin School series, as well as our facial rejuvenation categories, and share it with some friends and family. And if you have any questions or comments, drop it below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give us a thumbs up. And until next time, thank you so much, Dr. Amir Karam.